Welcome to Biomanufacturing and Fermentation Technology. This is your monthly bioprocess and biomanufacturing intelligence, the data, the decisions, and the scale-up realities shaping what comes next.
Right now, think about this. The global biomanufacturing industry is spending millions of dollars.
Oh, easily. Millions.
And literally burning tons of fossil fuels just to ship water.
Yeah.
Just water. Across the entire globe. Often in the form of these huge, heavy containers of liquid cell culture media and buffers.
Right.
It sounds completely irrational when you say it out loud, but, until very recently, that was just considered the unavoidable cost of doing business.
That's just how you made drugs.
Exactly. If you wanted to manufacture life-saving biologic drugs, you shipped the water. But today, we are diving into the April 2026 Bioprocess and Biomanufacturing Intelligence Bulletin.
Which is packed this month, by the way.
It really is. It pulls together the biggest breakthroughs from BPI Europe in Vienna and the Interfex 2026 conference. And we're going to explore how simply changing how we ship that water is unlocking a massive revolution in drug manufacturing.
Yeah, the level of innovation we're seeing in this month's bulletin is, it's genuinely shifting the paradigm. But walking the floor at these conferences or, just reading through hundreds of pages of product announcements, it can be incredibly disorienting.
Oh, you bet.
You have highly practical solutions sitting right next to, sci-fi concepts.
Yeah.
Concepts that realistically will not see a commercial production floor for another decade.
Right, which is exactly why our mission for you today is to act as a filter.
Yeah.
We are taking all of these announcements, product launches, case studies, and mapping them onto a very specific, very pragmatic framework.
The readiness versus commercial impact quadrant.
Yes. We want to separate the immediate imperatives from the long-term science projects for you.
Because evaluating technology on those two axes is crucial. First, you have technical readiness.
Right.
How ready is this innovation to be deployed in a GMP good manufacturing practice environment right now? Meaning, does it actually meet the strict regulatory standards required to produce drugs for human beings safely?
Safely and reliably, yeah.
Exactly. And second, we look at commercial impact. If you do implement it, how significantly will it move the needle on your production costs, your facility footprint, or, your speed to market?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we are dealing with increasingly complex drug modalities these days, right? Like cell and gene therapies or highly concentrated monoclonal antibodies.
Yeah, the tricky stuff.
The tricky stuff. And the margins for error are getting tighter. Knowing where to place your capital bets today versus what to simply monitor, that could be the difference between leading the market and becoming completely obsolete.
It really could.
So let's start in the absolute top right corner of our quadrant. The do-it-now tier.
High readiness, high commercial impact.
Exactly. What is the single most urgent priority the data is pointing to?
Well, the undisputed Tier 1 priority is process intensification.
Okay.
If an organization is looking for the best balance of immediate ROI and market competitiveness, this is the starting point.
No question.
No question. The industrial validation data coming out of BPI Europe shows companies rapidly moving these intensified processes out of the pilot phase and directly into commercial scale evaluations.
Which makes sense, because traditionally, biomanufacturing has operated using a fed batch approach.
Right.
To use a very basic analogy, fed batch is kind of like, it's like putting a bunch of fish in a tank, dropping in a set amount of food, and just hoping the water doesn't get too toxic from their waste before you're ready to harvest them all at once.
That's surprisingly accurate. Or like a giant clunky coffee percolator where you're just waiting for the whole pot to brew.
Yes, exactly. And process intensification, specifically techniques like perfusion, is like upgrading to a highly efficient, continuous espresso line.
I like that.
You're constantly pumping in fresh water and nutrients while simultaneously siphoning out the waste and the product. Smaller footprint, faster cycle time, less waste. You keep the cells happily producing for much longer.
That captures the biological reality perfectly. By keeping the cells in an optimal state, rather than letting them experience that feast or famine cycle of a batch process, you drastically improve the yield.
Wow.
And the metrics reported in the bulletin are highly disruptive. We are seeing data pointing to potentially 23% lower manufacturing costs.
23%?
Yeah, and up to a 51% smaller facility footprint.
Okay, wait. I have to challenge that 51% footprint reduction, though.
Sure.
Because that sounds incredible on paper, but realistically, isn't retrofitting an existing legacy facility to achieve that kind of continuous flow, isn't that going to cost a fortune?
It's a fair point.
Like, are those footprint savings mostly just for companies building brand new greenfield sites?
It is a valid concern,
Right.
and retrofitting does require significant capital, obviously. However, the footprint reduction isn't just about shrinking the physical bioreactor.
Oh, it's not.
No, because you're constantly harvesting the product instead of holding massive volumes of liquid for a single end-of-run harvest. You eliminate the need for enormous holding tanks.
Oh.
You use fewer, smaller, single-use plastic bags for storage. That cascades through the entire facility design. So even in a retrofit, freeing up that much floor space allows a company to add entirely new production lines within their existing four walls.
Ah, I see. Okay, that makes the cost-benefit analysis much clearer. But the bulletin also points out a historical bottleneck here.
The clarification bottleneck.
Yes. When you intensify a process, you create a very high titer output,
Right.
meaning the concentration of the actual drug, like a monoclonal antibody,
Right.
mixed in with all the cellular debris, is incredibly high. And separating that drug from the junk without clogging the equipment has been a total nightmare.
Clarification has always been the Achilles heel of high-titer perfusion.
Mm.
Typically, pushing that much cellular mass through a standard filter plugs the microscopic pores almost immediately.
Yeah, it just gets gunked up.
Exactly. But the sources highlight a major breakthrough with high-sieving microfilters. Instead of just pushing the liquid dead-on into a static screen, these systems often utilize flow dynamics that constantly wash the surface of the membrane while it filters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it literally sweeps the cellular debris away from the pores, preventing the buildup and keeping the flow continuous.
So the filter basically cleans itself while it operates.
Exactly.
That is brilliant, and it solves the downstream traffic jam. And there is a massive sustainability angle here, too, right?
Absolutely.
By shrinking the footprint and reducing the need for all those massive single-use holding bags, companies are making serious dents in their Scope 3 emissions, those indirect carbon emissions tied to their supply chains and waste management.
The environmental impact is substantial. But if we follow the operational logic here, solving one bottleneck inevitably exposes another.
Naturally.
If you successfully intensify your process and your bioreactors are now continuously churning out high-titer product at unprecedented speeds,
They're going to be hungry.
exactly, your facility is going to consume raw materials much faster.
Which brings us right back to the absurdity of shipping water.
Yes, it does.
If your new, hyper-efficient continuous system is ravenous for cell culture media, your supply chain might literally buckle under the weight of shipping all those giant liquid vats to feed it.
Right.
Which transitions us perfectly into the next area of our map, the strategic build tier.
These are medium readiness, high commercial impact technologies.
Right. They might require some internal pilot studies before broad deployment, but they offer immense strategic advantage over the next 12 to 24 months. And the standout solution to our shipping problem here is point-of-use media systems.
This was a huge focus at Interfex. The concept flips the traditional supply chain on its head entirely.
Thank goodness.
Right. Instead of relying on a vendor to mix the cell culture media into a liquid and ship it across an ocean, you receive the media components as a dry, heavily compacted powder.
Like protein powder.
Exactly like that. You store that powder directly on site. Then you integrate a modular automated hydration system that mixes the powder with pharmaceutical-grade water on demand right when the bioreactor needs it.
The Bulletin projects that operating this way at scale could lead to a 2/3 reduction in your carbon footprint.
2/3.
2/3.
Eh.
Just by cutting out the logistics of refrigerating and flying heavy liquid around the world. I mean, if you're running a decentralized manufacturing model where you have smaller facilities distributed across different global regions, having point-of-use media seems essential just for basic supply chain resilience.
Supply chain resilience is exactly the primary driver here. We saw during recent global disruptions how fragile the supply of critical raw materials can be.
Oh, yeah.
Keeping months of dry powder inventory on-site takes up a fraction of the warehouse space compared to liquid storage. It drastically insulates a facility from shipping delays.
Okay, so that covers the raw material side of the strategic build tier. But the second technology in this quadrant is focused entirely on digital infrastructure.
Physics-informed digital twins.
Yes. Now, I have to admit, whenever I hear the phrase digital twin, my marketing jargon alarms start ringing.
Oh, for sure.
We hear about machine learning and AI constantly everywhere. Why do we suddenly need to add physics-informed to the buzzword bingo?
The skepticism is completely warranted. The biopharma industry has been burned by overpromising AI before.
Definitely.
What's fascinating here is To understand why physics-informed is a critical distinction, we have to look at how pure machine learning works. Traditional AI is fundamentally a black box.
Right.
You feed it historical data, and it finds statistical correlations. It might tell you that raising the temperature by 1 degree will increase your yield by 5%, but the algorithm doesn't actually understand the biology of the cell or the thermodynamics of the tank. It just knows the math.
And regulatory bodies like the FDA require you to prove why a process works, not just that an algorithm guessed correctly.
Exactly.
If a batch fails, you can't tell an auditor, well, the black box told us to turn up the heat.
They'll laugh you out of the room. Regulators demand explainability and causality. This is where physics-informed AI changes the game entirely.
Okay.
It takes real-time data from process analytical technology.
Those are the sensors, right?
Right. PATE involves placing highly sensitive inline sensors directly inside the bioreactor to constantly read parameters like dissolved oxygen, pH, and glucose levels.
Got it.
The physics-informed model takes that continuous stream of PAT data and constrains the AI's predictions using the actual immutable laws of physics and biology: mass balance equations, fluid dynamics, metabolic limits.
So you are basically putting heavy guardrails on the AI.
Precisely.
You're telling it to find the most efficient path forward, but explicitly forbidding it from suggesting anything that breaks the laws of physics or pushes the cells into a toxic state.
Yes. By constraining the model with physical reality, it becomes auditable. It becomes trustworthy.
That's huge.
Innovators like Novozymes are featured in the Bulletin for building these very practical, GMP-applicable models. A facility can use these digital twins to run thousands of simulated batches in a computer.
Wow.
They can accurately predict how a process will behave when you scale it up from a 10-liter lab bench to a 2,000-liter commercial tank.
Without wasting real material.
Exactly. It dramatically accelerates tech transfer because you solve the scaling errors digitally before you ever commit physical resources.
That really bridges the gap between digital promise and actual auditable GMP validation. It makes complete sense why it sits in the strategic build tier. I mean, you need a very mature data architecture and a strong PATI setup to even run a model like that, which takes time to implement.
Oh, absolutely. It requires a serious foundational investment in your data pipelines. You cannot build a digital twin on fragmented, siloed data stored in spreadsheets.
Definitely not.
Right.
Which perfectly sets up the transition to the next section of our analysis, the monitor and support tier. We've talked about guided, physics-constrained AI, but the most prominent resident of the low-readiness, high-potential impact quadrant takes that concept to the extreme: fully autonomous AI process control.
Put this firmly on your long-term watch list.
Yeah, but if digital twins are already simulating batches, why are fully autonomous factories, where the AI just runs the whole show, stuck in low readiness? Are regulators just dragging their feet?
Blaming regulatory red tape is a common industry reflex, but
I'm guilty of it.
we all are. But in this specific case, the technological hype is outpacing the biological robustness. A fully autonomous system would theoretically make real-time, complex control decisions across an entire facility without a human in the loop.
Right.
The barrier is that biological systems' living cells are inherently chaotic and variable. Even with the best PD sensors, unexpected metabolic shifts occur.
And the stakes are simply too high. When you're manufacturing a life-saving biologic, a single parameter hallucinated by an AI could ruin millions of dollars of product.
Or worse, compromise patient safety. The industry and the regulators need an exponentially higher degree of model explainability before they will hand over the keys entirely. This is why hybrid, physics-constrained systems are the practical choice for today.
Makes sense.
Autonomous AI is a paradigm-shifting concept, which is why it has high potential impact, but it firmly belongs on your watch list. Monitor the pilot programs, but avoid over-allocating your capital there right now.
Good advice. Also sitting in this middle monitor tier is modular sustainable manufacturing, listed as medium readiness, medium impact.
Right. Modular manufacturing involves building a facility using standardized prefabricated pods or suites that can be quickly reconfigured.
Like Lego bricks.
Essentially, yeah. It's an excellent strategy for meeting ESG targets, environmental, social, and governance, and it provides incredible physical flexibility. However, its commercial value is heavily dependent on an organization's specific business model.
So, like, if I am a CDMO, a contract development and manufacturing organization, and my business relies on constantly switching my facility between different clients' drugs, a modular setup is incredibly valuable.
Extremely valuable.
But if I'm producing a single massive blockbuster drug year-round, the ROI on all that flexibility is probably minimal.
That is the exact strategic trade-off. It isn't a universal silver bullet. It's a business model-specific advantage.
What strikes me as we go through this quadrant is that none of this technology exists in a vacuum. You can buy the best high-sieving microfilters and license the smartest digital twins, but you need physical infrastructure to test them, regulatory frameworks to approve them, and, well, human beings to run them.
Exactly.
A bulletin spends a significant amount of time highlighting how the broader ecosystem is moving to support this massive technological shift.
The ecosystem context is arguably the most critical part of the April Bulletin. Hardware and software are useless without the environment to deploy them. We're seeing major infrastructural investments explicitly designed to lower the barrier to entry for these new technologies. A prime example is Thermo Fisher Scientific opening their flagship U.S. Bioprocess Design Center in Plainville, Massachusetts.
The report mentions it's a 4,000 square foot facility, but what does a design center actually do in practice? Is it just a glorified showroom for their shiny new equipment?
No, it functions much more like a collaborative sandbox. It's dedicated lab and training space where drug sponsors can work side by side with technology providers.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. If a company wants to switch from fed batch to continuous perfusion, they don't have to guess how it'll work in their own expensive facility. They can go to a design center, physically hook up the new bioreactors, test the digital twin integration, and actively de-risk the entire process development cycle before committing to a commercial build-out.
That makes the tech transfer process so much less terrifying.
Doesn't it?
And the CDMO market is also showing strong momentum here, aggressively building out capacity and hiring specialized talent for complex modalities. Things like precision fermentation, where CRISPR, strain engineering, and advanced AI are heavily utilized.
Right.
But beyond the private sector infrastructure, the policy landscape is also shifting to accommodate these changes.
Policy is the invisible hand guiding all of this adoption. In Europe, the EU Biotech Act II is gaining serious momentum.
I saw that.
Nearly 40 different industry organizations issued a joint call for a market-focused framework. While the initial Biotech Act was very health-focused, Act II is explicitly targeting industrial competitiveness, scale-up frameworks, and streamlining the regulatory pathway for advanced biomanufacturing.
And stateside, the FDA is addressing the friction of upgrading technology. The bulletin notes that the FDA's SUPAC guidance, which stands for Scale-Up and Post-Approval Changes, has an open comment period through June 2026.
That's a big deal.
This seems crucial because, historically, if a company wanted to improve a process they had already gotten approved, the regulatory burden of proving the new process was safe was so heavy that they often just stuck with outdated, inefficient methods.
The if it isn't broken, don't fix it mentality. It has held the industry back for decades.
Yeah.
The SUPAC guidance is an opportunity for R&D teams to shape a more flexible regulatory pathway. It aims to clarify exactly what data is needed when you make a change, like adopting continuous manufacturing or implementing an inline PD sensor so that modernization isn't penalized by endless regulatory delays.
It is all interconnected. Process intensification requires flexible scale-up regulations to actually be deployed. But as we look at all these moving parts, there is one piece of news from the bulletin that feels like the foundation for everything else.
The WHO initiative.
Yes. The WHO, the World Health Organization, just announced a major expansion of its global biomanufacturing workforce network. They're establishing regional training centers across all 6 of its global regions.
The expert analysis in the bulletin labels the current workforce shortage as a severe structural risk.
Structural risk, wow.
The skills gap in vaccine and biotherapeutic production is at a critical level, particularly in low and middle income countries. You cannot simply drop an advanced physics-informed AI system into a newly built facility in an emerging market if the local workforce lacks the foundational biochemical engineering skills to interpret the data.
The WHO initiative focuses on context-specific multilingual training. It's an acknowledgement that true global manufacturing capacity isn't just about building steel tanks.
Right.
It's about human capital. You need the Thermo Fisher design centers to test the tech, the FDA guidance to approve it, and the WHO training infrastructure to ensure there are actually people capable of running it.
The advancement of hardware and software must be entirely synchronized with the advancement of human talent. Otherwise, the technology becomes a bottleneck rather than an accelerator.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you look at your own organization's strategy? Instead of just giving you a checklist, let's look at the strategic trade-offs based on this Readiness versus impact quadrant.
Okay, if your organization's immediate imperative is drastically lowering manufacturing costs and reducing your facility footprint, process intensification is the undeniable priority.
Right.
But the trade-off is that you must be prepared to fundamentally overhaul your downstream clarification processes, likely investing in advanced microfilters to handle the increased titer.
Got it. And if your primary struggle is scale-up reliability, like if you're constantly facing unpredictable deviations when moving from the lab to the production floor, the strategic play is investing in physics-informed digital twins.
Yes.
The trade-off there, you cannot do it overnight. You have to spend the time and capital up front to mature your inline P8 sensors and unify your data architecture first.
Exactly. For organizations aggressively prioritizing corporate sustainability and supply chain resilience, particularly those with multi-product or decentralized facilities, running pilot studies for point-of-use media systems should be highly prioritized to eliminate the massive logistical footprint of shipping liquids.
And if you're trying to future-proof a facility for multiple unpredictable product lines over the next decade, align your capital strategy with modular manufacturing designs, accepting that the upfront flexibility might come at a slight premium compared to a dedicated single-use site.
Right. Synthesizing the entire April 2026 bulletin into a single strategic thesis.
The bottom line.
The bottom line. Process intensification represents the absolute strongest near-term operational opportunity because it marries high technical maturity with immediate measurable cost reduction.
Yep.
However, physics-informed digital twins represent the single strongest future competitive differentiator. The teams that learn to merge deep biological engineering with robust, constrained digital models will dictate the pace of the market for the next decade.
It is a fascinating balancing act between the biology, the digital architecture, and the logistics.
It really is.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We spend so much time analyzing the machinery, right? Evaluating the continuous bioreactors, scrutinizing the digital twins, projecting the impact of autonomous AI.
Yeah, the shiny objects.
Exactly. We look for the perfect technological solution to every biological problem. But given the WHO's aggressive move to establish global training centers, we have to ask a harder question. What if the ultimate bottleneck in the next era of biomanufacturing isn't the FDA? What if it isn't the limitations of machine learning or the physics of high-titer clarification? What if the true ceiling on our industry's growth is simply finding enough highly trained, deeply knowledgeable human beings to turn these incredible machines on in the first place?
It's a real possibility.
As you assess your own readiness versus impact quadrant, take a hard look at how you are balancing your investment in technology with your investment in the people required to master it. Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
That's this month's Bioprocess Intelligence. If you're turning biology into manufacturing at scale, these are the signals to watch. I'm Prasad Ernala. See you next month on Biomanufacturing and Fermentation Technology.